So today the green 66 is back in the shop. We are going to be tackling the bed floor. The plan with this truck is to put a wood bed floor in here. So to do that, we'll have to build a frame, replace the inner wheel wells, and then also some of the inside of the bed is rotting out along the bottom where water has set underneath the old toolbox and stuff. So what I did was order new inner wheel wells from Carolina Classics out of North Carolina. They got here really quick in about 3 days. We're going to start on the passenger side, get the old one cut out, drill out spot welds, pull that out, and then start tackling the bed sides. After we get the wheel wells and the inner bed sides done, I'll go ahead and start building the frame. I got 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch 1/8 inch wall tube, and then 1.5 inch by 3 inch 1/8 wall tube as well. And that's going to be rebuilding my cross members and also the frame. So we're going to get that started, cut out, done today. I got a helping hand you won't see on the video, but it's gonna bring this thing back to life. I also need to replace some of this other sheet metal up here while I go along. So let's get started by getting this bed cleaned out, and then we'll go from there. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is get this thing cleaned out. I got some tires and some bed wood in here, bed wood that I just had. So let's get all this stuff out of here, and then we'll start evaluating what we need to cut out and what needs to go. Come on, door. Hurry up. Okay, so as you can see, there's a little bit of weight reduction in this bed. What I've done previously is welded in some brackets back here just to hold it up so it didn't droop down. When I first got the truck, the bed was probably sitting 6 inches lower. So we're going to sweep all this rust out of here and then cut out the old inner fenders and then weld in the new ones and start replacing these inner bed sides from the bend joint down, and then we'll seal everything up with primer and start building the frame for the bottom of the bed. So let's get this cleaned out and start cutting out these inner fenders. So I've decided I'm going to go ahead and cut straight along the top of this bedside right here, and then I'll section off inside of here just to get the whole bedside out in one piece. That'll save a lot of cutting that I don't need to do. So I've already marked out the top of the bedside where I'm going to replace it with the new metal, and measured where these wheel wells are from the back of the truck forward and from the bedside down. So I'm going to start cutting all this out, tear all this stuff out, get the bed frame out of here, and then I'll go ahead and start rebuilding the sides and the frame. All right, let's go. Okay, so I've gone ahead and, as you can see, cut these sides out, folded them in. I'm about to wrestle the rest of this bed out of here, and then we should be able to start putting in the new bed sides and then building the frame. Got a couple scrap pieces of metal where I had to cut it short. I need to tighten up on, get the spot welds drilled out, make a clean cut, replace it, and then we're good to go. So I'm gonna wrestle this guy out of here and then start rebuilding. All right, well, the bed floor's out. I'm gonna go ahead and get this side metal cleaned up. Just use little pieces here on the end, and then I'll go ahead and start getting that measured out and cut. The cutouts for the wheel wells, and then start tack welding it in and work my way all the way around the outside. So after a few hours of just wire wheeling everything, getting all the scale off from any of the rusted areas, and then drilling out the spot welds, getting the remaining side panels off, we were able to treat the rust with this rust reformer. So I hit all the frame, the inside of the outer panels and everything with that rust reformer. And while that sets up, I'll go ahead and start measuring and cutting the sheet metal to put on the sides. Before I hang the sheet metal or the inner bed sides, I will go ahead and use etching primer and coat the inside of the panel just to give it some protection. So we're gonna start cutting out the inner side panels and getting all that prepped and ready. What I'll probably do is sand all that down and primer it and everything as well on the back side before I hang it. So I'm gonna get everything cleaned up and then we'll start measuring out and cutting that sheet metal. Before I cut the bed sides off, or the inner bed sides, I took some measurements of what the inner structure is. It's 12¼ inches tall by like 95½ inches long. So I'm gonna go ahead and get some layout done here, make some marks, draw some lines, and I'll cut my strips. And then we will fold the ends over so that we have something to spot weld the sides into the inner structures, and then measure from there in to see where our inner fender wells go. What we'll do is we'll just trace that out. We'll cut those inner fender wells how they're supposed to be, either on the ground or on the truck. I prefer to just cut them while we hang them in the truck. It'll be a little bit easier to cut on a vertical than being down here on the ground. So I'm gonna get some layout done, and then we'll cut our strips, see if they fit, do some trimming, and then we'll hang all that stuff after we get the inside of that primed, then also sand these and prime them. Down, they're both opposite from each other. Then I'm gonna have the rusted side, the primer side toward the inside of the truck. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this back fitted up inside the truck, and then start tack welding all the way across the top edge here, and then work on the other side. And after we've got that done and fully tacked, at least along the wheel well, we'll go ahead and start getting that cut out and put in. So this panel sits right up in here. Like that, and then replaces it. I'm gonna have to go get an extra hand to help me do this. So we're gonna get this fitted up, tack welded in, and then we'll revisit it and start looking at getting the wheels, inner wheels installed. All right, well, we have made some progress. I got this side panel put in. I spot welded all the way across this so that I can get this fender put in and weld that together. I still have the rest of the welding to do, but I got this done, ground down so I can get this in. I drilled out holes all the way around the fender and then spot welded in. And I went ahead and made this front corner piece down here for the front panel. To be able to do the front panel, I have to slide the bed back and drill the spot welds from the front side to be able to remove this lower half of the front panel. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump to the other side, do the same thing. I'm going to get the fender installed, final weld the seams all the way across, grind those down smooth, spot weld the back portions, and then start building the frame for the inside of the bed. After the frame's built, we'll take the bed off and work on the front piece. So I'm going to go ahead and just get back to welding the other side and just get the fender in like I did here. I'm not happy with some of these little gaps in here, but also not really worried about it. I'm going to seam seal it and grind a line the inside of the bed. So let's get started on grinding and welding the other side and getting that fender put in place. Let's get this fender up here. I've already got all this welded in, ground down so it fits. Because after you get the fender mounted, you can't go back in here and reach everything for grinding. So I've done all that. I made my mark here for where the old fender was. It was 26 3/8 of an inch from the inside web of the back, and then 6 1/4 inches down from the inside of this top rail here. So I'm gonna get it roughly set into place. Use these clamps to lock it in, and then what we'll do is we'll make a mark for the fender, measure in, and then cut out the inside. I'll show you guys what I mean in a second. So we're gonna get this guy up here to the front. Top set. So we got our fender mounted up. We clamped it in with our clamps, and we're gonna go ahead and go around the outside of here. Make our mark. Now that we got the outside edge of our fender drawn here, we can take our measurement of our flange, which is 5/8, and we can draw that all the way around here and then cut it out. So let me get that drawn in. All right, that's drawn. We'll go ahead and cut this out with a cutoff wheel, drop that out, clamp in our fender, and weld that into place. So once I got the inner fenders welded in, I went ahead and just started going and getting the frame around the outside of the bed done and just got all that knocked out off camera. That way we can jump forward and not make this video really long. And I did is I used 1.5 by 1.5 square tuber on the outside. I set the 1.5 by 3-inch tubes on the front and the rear cross member bolt-in spots, and then I ran a string line across it to figure out where these all sat so it didn't go up and down everywhere. The next thing I need to do is get these middle cross members done, and because the frame has a hump in it for the rear axle, I need to notch out these tubes and then box it back in and make brackets for it to get welded here on the front. So we're going to jump into all that today, get these guys fitted, set into place, weld the cross members in, and then move on to taking the bed off and fixing that front panel. After that, we should be ready for the bed strips. Once they get in, we can go ahead and start fitting up the wood. So let's just start getting this stuff cut out and just finish fitting everything up and welding it in. We got a little size tack welded, but I plan to go ahead and fully weld all that stuff in as well. That way, I don't have to worry about water getting down in between it and potentially rusting everything out. So we've gotten these notches cut out, and these will set right down in here over the frame. And what that allows us to do is to go ahead and have this guy at the same elevation or the same level as these side panels. And then what I'll do is I'll just make a small tab that gets welded to this guy, basically in the shape of a U, for the bolt to go through the wood and then down into the frame. That way everything's all connected in one piece. I'll have a little channel here. The same thing up on the front. I'm going to put a loop basically on the front of the cross member, and then the bolt will go down through the loop and then through the frame. That way it doesn't like crush the wood or anything. So we'll go ahead and get these all prepped up. I'm ready for the tabs to get welded on. Not sure if I'm going to leave this this channel open 100%, but I don't see why it's going to hurt. But I'm going to go ahead and figure that out and weld in the pieces that close these tubes back up. So the next thing to do is take the cutouts from the channel that we have and flip them upside down, stick them on a magnet, put them back in the tube. And what that'll do is allow us to weld all this up and give us a nice channel that we can set back down on the frame, and then you're not going to get a whole bunch of mud and everything else and water up inside the tubes. And then we'll weld up all 4 sides and we put the rest of the frame together. So I'm going to get all 4 of these holes filled in like this, grind the welds, and then start making the little tabs that we can bolt everything to the frame and go from there. One thing I would like to do before I start welding any of these cross members in is get these all sanded down so that I can just prime them real easy after I get the bed off the truck. What we're going to do is take the bed off, flip it upside down, primer the bottom and everything inside of the wheel wells and stuff, and then rebuild that front panel. Let's get to welding. So here's what we're trying to achieve. Go ahead and get that channel welded back in there. Now it's all sealed up, I'll just grind it down smooth where I need to, and then it'll set back over the frame. Let me go get the rest of the channels filled in. So I've prepped the cross members. I got the bottom and sides all sanded. That way I can prime them later. And I'm going to go ahead and get them all fit into place. And then I'm going to tack weld them here on the sides of the rest of the frame. I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage right now because I do not have the wood bed strips in. I ordered them 2 weeks ago now and I still haven't received them, so we're gonna have to wait on those, but I'm not gonna let that stop me from getting these cross members installed. The only thing it's gonna do is hold me up on where the bolts go through the wood and how they connect everything. I'm really not too worried about that right now. I just want to be able to get these cross members in and figure out where I'm going to actually bolt the bed down. I think there's a couple of spots on these two, in the front and at the rear where the bed bolts down. And I don't know how that's going to interfere with the bolts. So for the time being, I'm going to get these tack loaded in place along the edges and then work on some preparing these other cross members and stuff like that for primer. And then just wait for the bed strips to come in and we'll go ahead and finish it. So the next task that I have is to put some type of flange or bracket on this cross member so that it can be attached to the bed. So what my plan is so far is to take a piece of the channel that I cut out without the weld seam and flip it over and set it up against this guy and then weld it in place. And what that'll do is just give me a tab that can bolt down to the frame and hold this guy down in place. I'm doing it on both sides. The only thing I'm worried about is when the wood gets up here is where the bolt for those strips is going to land, if it lands in this hole or in front of it or behind it. So I think that's just something I'm going to have to deal with as I get to that point. But for now, I'm just going to cut a couple pieces of this channel and then I'll weld it into place. And then that'll give you something to start with. What I'm going to do is just cut a whole piece and cut the flat side off, so I got all the room that I need to be able to get this guy in place. Yeah. I think it'll work just fine. There's first. There's second. Let's go ahead and put it in drive. There's reverse.